Vegas, Nevada, long held to be America's playground and the entertainment capital of the world. Making it in show business on the Las Vegas Strip is a bigger gamble than playing to win on the endless sea of gaming tables and slot machines that fill the casinos, airports, and even convenience stores. The rule in this desert oasis? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But there are always exceptions, and this story is definitely one that should not stay in Vegas. Hi, this is David Ruprecht here to share with you That's All Right, the story of Pete, Big Elvis Vallée, and the impact he has had on friends, family, millions of fans, and Las Vegas. However, back in the 1990s, at the age of 27, Pete found himself 1,125 miles away from the neon lights of the Vegas Strip. After years spent as a struggling entertainer, and we'll have more on that later, Pete Vallée set out to make a stable life for himself and his growing family in Seattle, Washington.
We went back to Seattle. I got actually a job at the Port of Seattle. I was working security police there. I went to college. I got a pre-law degree, and I was studying to be an attorney, which was even crazier. So I went through 2 years of that. I ended up as a manager at the Port of Seattle. I was the youngest manager in the United States for security police at 27 years old. It was all in the papers and all and it was really funny because I was singing at all the events there. And everybody, all the cops, all the managers, all the people at the Port, APL, American President lines, they were all going to Vegas and vacations. They're coming back going, you need to go to Vegas. I said, I just came from there about 7 years ago. They go, no, you're better than all the rest of these guys down there. Go to Vegas. And I'm like, well, at the time I met somebody, I had a wife and kids, and I thought, I got to be responsible. So I thought, well, that's the end of my career. I'll end up raising my kids and I'll stay here. And little to know, about 2 years later, my wife was really young, and she says, I don't want to be married. It's not that I don't love you, not that I don't care. I just don't want to be married. I want to be on my own. And what she really wanted to do was date other guys, and that's what she did. So she took the kids. She moves to Las Vegas. I'm up there, and I'm going, well, now what? I had a couple of really good friends of mine. They were both MPs. They had been in the service for years. They were sheriffs. They were retired. They both worked for me. They were underneath me. They were two sergeants. They practically ran the place. Well, they did run the place. I was the most laziest manager I've ever seen because those guys just took care of me like there was no tomorrow. But they loved me. They really did. We played poker. We played gin rummy. And all the events they had when they were at parties, I was singing. And finally one day, this guy named Rain, he was such an awesome guy. He sits down in my office. He goes, and he was Estonian. He goes, Peter, I go to Las Vegas, all the time, he says, all the time. Any entertainers, he says, I'm wasting my money and they're not even, I get better entertainment here with your performance than there. So he's saying to me, you don't belong here. He goes, and I'll miss you terrible. He goes, because you're my friend. He goes, you belong singing in Las Vegas. And I said, really? So I prayed on it, thought about it, and now I'm separated from my wife. I finally listened. I said, I'm not happy here. This could be the rest of my life sitting at this place, and will I be happy? No. I got a Dodge Ram van. I got a 20-foot RV. I connected it. I still had money left over. I put it in my pocket, and I came to Vegas, and I said, well, I'm going to give it a shot. And I was performing in this little bar for a couple of weeks, and it didn't do too well. They were the kind of people that drank 24/7 with their welfare checks, and they liked it, but it wasn't going to put me anywhere where I needed to go. So I went back to the RV I had, and I'm sweeping it out, cleaning, and I called my mother and said, Mom, I said, I don't think I'm going to make it here. I'm going to come back. And she goes, hey, well, you tried. She goes, I really respect that. It was good. You can always come visit your kids. And I got a phone call that same night because I was leaving that morning. My buddy had called me and says, listen, I was just at this place called the Roadhouse on Boulder Highway, and they're looking for a lounge act on the afternoons. They've got one on the evenings. They got one the later shift, but they're looking for one. Can you come and audition? The owner just happens to be there tonight. So I walked in there. Within 5 minutes, the guy goes, you're hired. You got the job.
You plainly see what everybody.
While performing at the Roadhouse on Boulder Boulevard, Pete was introduced to Tom and Lucille Starr. They're a couple who would make a lasting impact on Pete's career and his life.
I first met Pete Vallée in late 2000, and I was introduced to him by a marketing director for one of the larger casinos. She knew that I was interested in becoming a talent manager, and I had just started a talent agency, entertainment company, and my first husband, who passed away, he and I went to see Pete to find out if he had, first of all, any talent, if he was the type of person who we may want to manage. And Pete at the time was performing at a small casino honky-tonk restaurant on the Boulder Strip, which is on Boulder Highway. It was more of a locals area, and we sat down to dinner, and I thought, oh, this is just bad all around. Out comes Pete to the music of a boombox. It was a boombox, small sound system. He came out, and he was larger than life, and I remember his blue shiny shirt with the bling on it, and my husband at the time looked at me and I thought, oh wow, what is this? And so we said, is he supposed to be Elvis? I mean, I didn't even understand what was going on at the time. And then he opened his mouth and we just couldn't believe it. We were blown away. So we just sat there for 45 minutes during his whole set with our mouths open, just wondering, what is this guy doing in this place? He should be on the Strip. And we just looked at each other and I thought, I want to manage him. If I'm going to manage talent, I want to start with him. He is great. I want to take him from here and put him on the Strip. And he said, well, I would love to be on the Strip, but that's never going to happen for me. And one day, lo and behold, we got a call from Pete. And he said, I need a meeting. A casino owner's son came to see me. I have his card. I don't want to say the wrong thing. It's Center Strip. I need help.
And I mean, when I got hired to the Strip, nobody goes to Boulder Highway. Nobody. They don't even do that. There's no such animal as a casino owner to come down and say, hey, kid, do you want to come and play in my casino? Well, guess what? In 2002, hey, kid, do you want to come and play in my casino? And I mean, it was Michael Gahn, right, at the Barbary Coast. And he said, we'd love to have you.
And we went to work for the Gons. I signed a contract with Pete. I signed a contract with the Barbary Coast for 90 days. They wanted to see how he would work out. Pete was very worried.
I was really scared because I thought about the Strip. And everyone was telling me, he said, the Strip is very fickle. People go up there and they get 6 weeks, so they get, if you work 6 months on the Strip, that's a long haul. People just, and if you work a couple of years, it's almost unheard of. It does happen, but, it's not normal. So I was worried about that.
He got on stage and the lounge was completely empty. He started singing and lo and behold, people started filtering in from the sides of the casino, and by the end of the first set, it was packed and he never looked back.
So through the storm.
From then, that point, word got out. Big Elvis is on the Strip, and a couple of days a week at other places. He was exhausted, but he was, he was in his mid-30s, I believe, at the time, and so he was just going strong.
So this thing that was supposed to be for 6 weeks is 20 years and still going to this point.
Oh, yes, word got out indeed. Since first appearing on the Las Vegas Strip almost 20 years ago, thousands upon thousands have been in the audience for the Big Elvis show. But this isn't Pete's only run in Las Vegas. Pete Vallée's incredible journey began much, much earlier.
It's a very interesting segue with where I'm born because it's one of the two. It was either Tennessee or Canada. And to this day, we haven't really figured out which one it was, believe it or not. I was told, true story, I was told I was born in Tennessee, and there's a long story behind that. That's number one. Number two, I was raised pretty much in the Pacific Northwest and in Nashville, Tennessee, because my mother was a singer in Nashville. And she actually, got to meet Kitty Wells and Elvis. And I got to see the two different areas a lot, as a kid. And then, that was the early years. And when I was 15, then I was brought to Vegas. So my entire life, I know nothing other than all these casinos you see, and I'm a product of Las Vegas. I mean, you could tell. This is kind of interesting. When you're 3 or 4 years old, my mother was with my dad at the time, and, you know, they had a bar up in the Northwest, and basically my dad played the snares, my mother sang, and at 3 in the morning they were entertaining people. So, you know, I'd come out, and of course I wanted to be part of it too, and my dad says, well, sing for everybody. And that's, at 3 years old, I wanted to, you know, I'm singing Tiny Bubbles, and I'm acting really cool. Everybody's like, wow, that's cool. They're trying to be nice, but I thought, wow, this is great. I'm a ham. I'm a kid. I get to stay up. I love this. So it really, it's kind of strange because I always wanted to be in the limelight.
Well, Peter's always been an entertainer. I mean, he's been an entertainer since he's a little kid. He's the youngest. He always sought, you know, attention. You do all kinds of crazy antics, you know, to get a little bit of attention. But no, he's always been fun-loving, and I would call him a little bit mischievous at times. He was always entertaining us as a little person.
My dad liked music, but my mother was always playing, you know, take the guitar out, play. And Peter was, you know, swept up into that, and he always had talent. So right away he became the entertainment, and he was the baby. So he, even as a little baby, he was a cute little toddler with the big curls. He had that charisma already.
When I was singing in church, I happened to go to this little tiny Indian reservation that my brother was in a Bible college, and he went to this place every weekend. It was an Indian reservation, and the pastor was all such nice people. But he played guitar, and he had, you know, they sang really nice too, a lot of Johnny Cash stuff, but like, you know, gospel stuff. And so I really liked this guy, and so I'd sit close to him and sing, and he'd play guitar to the gospel music. So one time I'm singing, he looks over at me and he goes, man, son, he says, you sound just like a young Elvis Presley. I mean, just like him. He goes, do you know a lot of his music? And I said, no, I've always liked Elvis, but I was just a boy. And I was like, and my mother was a lot deeper into Elvis. I mean, literally, she knew a lot once she actually got to meet him. To make a long story short, I thought, well, this is interesting. And so when I went home after hearing that, my mother had told me that before. She goes, you really sound like a young Elvis. And I said, Mom, can I borrow some of your albums? And she says, yeah, you sure can. And she says, better yet, let me just buy you some. And Elvis had passed on. I wanted to see him the year before that this happened. And my mother actually got arrangements to meet and greet with Elvis at the Seattle Center. He was going to play in November of '77, but he died in August, so I never got that chance. My mother was devastated, needless to say, but that was the beginning of that. And you know, I started listening to some of the albums, and I just sang the songs, and that's how that really got started. So it wasn't really impersonating, it was already there. Yeah. You know, the voice was already there, and I thought, well, this is nice. So I mean, it's like, you know, and then of course, when I listened to the albums, I threw a little bit of inflections because it had a southern draw, and I'm not from the South that much. My mother was more, but then that was all there was to it.
It's his persona. It's just who he is, and he's been doing it a long time. Pete's been doing that a long time, and you become that character a little bit. You know what I mean? Without even trying. It's just the way he is. I just love his vocals. They blow me away.
9th grade, I signed up for the talent contest, and I played guitar and sang Heartbreak Hotel, and forget it. Once the people went crazy and I was singing, I was like, oh, okay, that's it. I loved it.
That's how he started. His very first performance was of an Elvis tune, and the girls just went crazy because they thought, wow, he looks just like him. And of course, if you see pictures of Pete at 19 and 20, he looks amazingly like Elvis Presley.
When he did that first little Elvis gig at the school, I mean, he knew that he was onto something. And after that, he was pretty adamant. I'm just gonna, you know, do Elvis. I'm gonna do music. I
was like, somebody took, you know, like they say you get shot with the bug.
Yeah.
That was it, man. I was just like, you know, people went crazy. You know, I'm looking at the kids really liked it, but at nighttime, it was the adults that went just bonkers. And I'm looking at 35-year-old women screaming in the front of the audience. I'm going, whoa, what is this?
Pete quickly discovered that talent and charisma at such a young age soon opened doors that most 15-year-olds would find not only locked, but bolted shut. This access would prove to be intoxicating, but trouble was never far away.
Pete started performing when he was quite young with his mom. And then his dad as well, Claude Vallée, was a performer. So he had it from both sides.
When I was like 50, well, actually, my mother met him. Let's back this up to Seattle in 1977. She met this guy, and I'll say his name because he won't mind at all. His name was Bob Davis. He had a friend of his that played guitar, and he sounded a lot like Johnny Cash, and he had this style. And my mother was trying to get a band going, so this guy met her some years before, and they got to know each other a little bit. But that wasn't the whole plan what happened. What really happened was this guy named Bob Davis and me hooked up in 1980 when I was like 15 years old, and I was supposed to be going to school. This is how this really all started. And the next thing you know, I was in bars with this guy. And this guy's like 35 years old. I'm like 15 years old, and I'm getting hammered, and I'm singing all over Seattle in the bars. When I was I was like 200 pounds, 6'1", and I looked a little bit younger than 21, but close enough that I could get by with it. So my mother was having a fit. She's like, "You're taking my son all over the place," and I wanted to sing so bad that I was like any group possible. So there was a group called Ricky and the Starfires. So Bob took me one night and goes, "There's this 50s, 60s group that's really popular." This is in 1980, and they're called Ricky and the Starfires. They're the hottest thing up here. So he goes, I talked to the drummer, and he says he's going to get you up to sing a couple songs. And we went on a Friday night, and it was this place, and it was packed. I mean, it was this huge bar that had like 1,000 people. So we're sitting there, and, he's like, "Here, have a few beers and get primed up." And I'm, feeling kind of loose, and I'm ready to go, man. And I'm like, he's going, "All right." So I get up there and I sing, "Well, the band likes me." And they go, "We're going to hire him." And he goes, "Well, there's only one little problem." And he goes, "You got to talk to Pete's mom." And he's 15 years old. The guy, the leader goes, "No, I don't want to hear this." And so he goes, "Well, we still want to hire him because he's really good, So they're sitting at my mother's house. They're like, "Can we hire your son?" My mom's like, "This kid's he's 15, he should be in school." And he's, and she's like, Bob's like, "Come on, Dolores, wouldn't you like this one?" So she taught, I don't know how they did it, but they talked my mother into letting me play with this group. I was like, "All right," because she sang, She goes, "But you can't keep giving him beer." So I'm being honest. So with this group, that's how it all started with this group. Then my uncle calls one day, and she said, "Well, he's never going to get anywhere in Seattle singing with a group. I mean, they could be great. He could be playing, he could go on tour and stuff, but you need to take him to Vegas. I'll give you the money to take him to Vegas so you guys could sing." So she comes to my room one day and she goes, "You're not in school anymore," because I did not want to go to school. And when I went to school, it was so sad because this is no lie. The teachers thought I was Elvis. They'd have me for all their frickin', what do they call it, recesses and their school meetings. We're going to have Elvis sing. And I wasn't passing any of my courses, but the teachers were passing me because the guy was going, "Well, let him pass because we need him for the, and I didn't know, I wasn't learning anything. So I'm sitting there going, "Well, what am I doing here? I don't want to do this." And it was like, I felt horrible. I was getting by on a scholarship because I sang. Does that make sense? It was crazy. It was horrible. See, now this is getting good. So Uncle says, "Take him to Vegas." So my mother comes in my room. She goes, "Look, you got to get your GED down the road or something because, this might falter. You really need to go to college at one time." I'm like, "Mom, I'm 15, going on 16. I don't know anything about college right now. I just want to sing." "Yes, I'll get my GED." So I did. I got my GED and went to college, but that was later. But she took me to Vegas. I'm 15 years old. She goes, "We need a manager." So my mother meets this guy in Vegas that's a manager that gets me an audition at the Sahara, which was Sandy Hackett had this every Monday night at the Sahara, the Casbar Lounge. He had this audition, okay, which I heard he never helped anyone, but he had this, it was free entertainment. So I'm there at 15 years old, and they have all these really, I don't want to be mean, but there's some people there that were playing the accordion, and there was these people trying to do, stand-up comedy, and they weren't doing it well at all. But, Sandy Hackett had this thing going. So my mother says, "I got this kid, he sings Elvis." She goes, "Oh, there's so many Elvis guys." No, you got to hear my son. He's really good at this." Okay, well, she said, "We'll give him a couple shots. We'll get him up early in the evening." So they did that, and the place it went over really good. I mean, really, 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 really good. And Sandy Hackett goes, you know, he says, can he come back next week? And this kept happening for like 3 or 4 weeks. And he goes, he's getting quite a following in this stupid lounge, you know, people are there talking about him. So they finally got me a job there to sing, you know, and they were like, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to come out and do your shtick, and after that, you're out the door. You're gone. And then another guy, his name was Steve Rossi. Steve Rossi, my mother meets Steve Rossi, and he's like, well, can you come over to the, I think it was called the Royal Casino, because he was the entertainment director there. So now I'm over at the Royal Casino. I'm 15 years old, and I'm singing at these places. And that went on for, well, probably about 8 or 9 years. And finally, in 1990, my mother was like, you're 25 years old, you know, you're a musician, and not saying that's bad or good, but you have no future. You know, you're either going to make it or you're not going to make it, or you're going to starve. And she got really worried. You know, it wasn't good for me because I was in a band, and that was when I was wild. I was drinking, and, you know, I was doing the pot stuff and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, okay, you know, she's right. So, you know, I got off everything. I quit drinking. I got off stuff. We went back to Seattle. I got actually a job at the Port of Seattle.
Pete's temporary move out of Vegas back to Seattle provided him with a clean start. Gone were many of the daily temptations that led to bad habits and addictions. However, one lifelong struggle remains with Pete to this very day.
The weight has been my Achilles heel. It always has been. I've battled with it since I'm probably 8 years old. You know, I've went through times where I've been actually, you know, fewer times than I have on the other side of the coin, but I've actually, a few times in my life, been at a normal weight. I actually, in 2008, got to the smallest I've gotten. I think it was like 400 pounds. And then I gained another 100 plus pounds back again. And that's somewhere in limbo again with that. You know, I've had always a problem. When I was a kid, my mother worked, and I was from, you know, in a divorced home, obviously. So her idea was, okay, there's, you know, in the 70s was, oh, I get you some frozen pizzas. There's, you know, this and that and the other thing. And I love food. So I was in there with the pizzas and the ice cream and the SpaghettiOs. You know, I was just a guy that loved his food, and food was security to me.
In 2004, Pete had reached about 600 pounds, 618 pounds. We brought him to the main post office to get weighed on the postal scale because there was no scale that could hold him at that time in this town. They loved him there. They knew him. We brought him there a few times because Tom was determined that Pete was going to lose some weight. And so we brought him there with just the three of us would go in, and he would get on the scale, and people would dissipate, and they'd know Big Elvis is coming in to get weighed. And he would go weigh himself. He'd say, oh, 618, okay. And we leave, and then he would try to see how he would do the next week. And then we bring him back to see if he lost anything the next week. And trying to work with his mom and trying to, you know, get him to a point that he could actually start to lose some of the weight and go back to the 300s, because we knew how he was at about 350. He was amazing, and he was just had so much energy, and we were worried for his health because of the amount of exercise that he had to put out there in performing. It was an amazing amount of energy he had to put out, and we were really afraid for him. So when Tom passed away in 2005, Peter was devastated, as we all were. Pete was upset, loved Tom as a dad. He was a father figure. He went into a bit of a depression. He gained a lot of weight. I think his mom had passed not long before that, so she was out of the picture as well. So it was just a very difficult situation. And I went and I got a couple of people who were close to us from the show, one of his neighbors and a couple of our close friends, and we set up a schedule. And the schedule was that he would not be alone ever, not 5 minutes, because we were worried that he was going to go off this program that I was putting him on. He was at that point up to 860 something pounds. It was one of the worst periods of his life. And he was dying. and we knew it. He knew it, and I knew it. And I just refused to let it happen. I was afraid that he was going to eat in the middle of the night. He had even gone so far as to order pizza and have them bring it through the window. This is how bad it was. So I slept on a love seat in the office. And I was like up almost all, like I was listening to make sure he was breathing, to make sure he didn't need something, to make sure he wasn't bringing something through a window, to make sure he wasn't sneaking food. This went on for maybe 2 years, a year and a half. And he started dropping the weight. Like, amazing. It was amazing.
I mean, I went on this program, lost a bunch of weight, stayed on it for like 2 years solid, and lost 500 pounds. I was 900 pounds at one time. I went down to 4. So I lost 500 pounds, and I was just eating chicken, fish, and I mean, just stringent. And then in 2008 or 2009, I thought, well, you know what? I want to eat again. I want to eat again. So I started with the pizzas and stuff, and I overdid it. So the weight started creeping back on. I'm not a young man anymore, and it's getting harder to get around as I get older, you know, and so it's getting more critical to get rid of this. So the only thing I'd like to share with people is, you know, if a person has a weight problem or doesn't eat properly, I'd like to share with them by saying, hey, if you can't do it all the time, but try, you know, a couple of days a week, you know, to eat something healthy, a salad or fish or chicken. And even if you, you know, do it 30% of the time, it's going to help you in the long run. And so, yeah, I'd like, you know, to help people in that regard. Here, I'm a guy that's, you know, could have done things much better, and I didn't, but I'm trying to make the best of what I can. And I probably wouldn't have made 51 years old had I mean, I know I wouldn't have, if I wouldn't have made changes years ago.
Be cruel, and it goes like this. We're right here. Hang on.
Whenever Pete performs, he is bombarded with countless questions from his fans. One of the most often asked is, where did you get that chair?
We did a show in Alabama, 2004. And while I was there, they made a makeshift chair for me. And then the guys that made the chairs said, you know what, that's not a good enough chair. We need to make you a real king's throne. And they did. And they said, we'll bring it to you. And I thought, you know, it's never going to happen. Sure enough, they made the chair and they drove it all the way to Las Vegas back in 2004. I've had it in the show for 13 years. It went from being plain wood to white to gold now. So this chair's still living on.
Another subject that piques interest is Pete's wedding to Amanda. It became an international event, seen around the world.
Our wedding was unbelievable, because it started off, I thought, was going to be a local deal, but it ended up all over the world. I mean, I had a friend of mine that was traveling. He was a person that travels all over, and he goes, you're never going to believe this in a million years. And I heard it like 3 or 4 different places. He goes, I'm in New Delhi in India. He says, and I'm looking at a magazine. Who do I see but Amanda and Peter getting married? And there's a photo of Amanda and Peter and Elvis and Priscilla, and they're comparing you guys. And it was so funny because that was being compared all over the place. In Vegas, they were talking about the most important Vegas' weddings of all time. And they showed, you know, Elvis and, you know, Joan Collins. And there's a picture of Amanda and I with Elvis and Priscilla, like Big L. I mean, it was like, it really, you know, there's crews coming from Italy. There was people, it was, Robin Leach was there. I couldn't believe it. I'd never seen, it was unbelievable.
It was fun. It was amazing. It was done beautifully. This crowd, like 10,000 people, just everywhere. And it was broadcasted around the world, even in the Philippines, where some of my cousins are. They saw it too. So
it was all over the news. It was all over the. They had a big Elvis fest at the Hilton that year, and it took over the Elvis fest. They were so mad at us. Joe Esposito, that worked for Elvis, was like, I can't believe that guy did this, and we had no, you know, we didn't do that on purpose. It just was our wedding day. But they were like, they preempted everything. They preempted everything. It was incredible. It really was. I've never seen something like that. And the amount of people that were there, it was a big wedding. It was exciting. It was something else.
And Sonny West, who had been Elvis Presley's bodyguard, served as Pete's best man. Interestingly, years earlier, Elvis had served as Sonny's best man.
This is my first time to ever be a best man to anybody. Pete's my friend. He's beyond just being a tribute artist. He's someone I admire. He's a friend. He's a super person. And I've told the others no, and I thought, well, I'm not going to let this be setting a precedent. I'm going to tell him that he's my friend. He's very special, and that's why I did it.
Sonny West was Elvis's chief bodyguard for 20 years. And Sonny traveled with Elvis night and day. And I met Sonny, he wrote a book, and they asked me if I'd mind having him on the show and actually be a commentator to ask them questions about the book. And I said, sure. So we had him on the show. And Sonny and I got to be really good friends. He really liked the show. He liked who I was as a person. And he told me candidly, he said, you know, you've got a lot of Elvis's traits naturally by being, you and him are a lot alike. You guys were like two peas in a pod. You'd have hit it off like no tomorrow. And so we just got to be really tight friends. And then when I got married in 2010, Elvis was his best man at his wedding, and he had never been a best man for anybody. He'd never been in a wedding party. And I said, Sonny, would you be my best man? And at first he goes, well, let me get back to you, Pete. I've never done this before. And then he called me 2 days later and he goes, I'm on my way, I'm gonna do it. So Sonny West was my best man at my wedding, and we just been really good friends.
Now, obviously, Pete is popular with everyday folks from around the country and around the world. But he's also extremely popular with his fellow entertainers. They love to come by to see the Big Elvis Show.
Well, I've known Pete for years. We've both been in town for a while. It was then the Imperial Palace. And that's where Legends in Concert was, and that's where I was performing. So we would go over to his show, over to Barnaby Coast, and see him in there and get up every once in a while and sing. I've always loved him. He's a great guy, and his vocal just kills me. Yeah, I mean, he's got a great voice.
Yeah, over the years, we've had a few really interesting things happen. You know, Elton John's people in 2000, I think it was 5 or 6, he said, would you mind if we put your pictures, a little bit of bio story for you in a book he was doing for, at the time, helping the AIDS Foundation? I said, no, by all means. So they did photos and stuff. His people came over and he said, you know, Elton's been to see your show. And I said, no, I didn't know that. And he says he's been at the show and he loves your voice. So I gave him CDs and stuff and signed for him. So to have that happen was, you know, that was really nice. Who else have we seen? I mean, Robert De Niro's been by the show. He loved it. Arnold Schwarzenegger's been by the show. He loved it. Al Pacino's liked the show. Marie Osmond's liked the show. It's nice when they give you, you know, hey, we really enjoy what you do. So, and I feel the same. They're very talented themselves. So it's, yeah, over the years, it's been interesting to hear that.
This next song was a song that Elvis was going to record and never had the chance to do so. It came out of 1974. A lady by the name of Dolly Parton wrote this song. And 20-something years later, Whitney Houston would record this song and make a platinum hit out of it, triple platinum.
There was a guy by the name of Jimmy Velvet. Now, he worked with Elvis and knew his father very well, Vernon. He knows Dolly Parton. He knows everybody. This guy, he met them all. So he said to me, he said, well, you know, Dolly wanted to do that song with Elvis, you know, I'll always love you. And Elvis wanted to do it too, but Colonel Parker wanted all the rights to the song. And Dolly just wasn't going to give it up. And so Elvis was going to record it. Never got the chance to do so. He passed away and he wanted to do that song so bad. So, and then Dolly says, I'd really like to have somebody that sounds like Elvis do this song. And so Jimmy Velvet goes, I know a guy that's, you know, really, really sounds just like him. She goes, would you give me a demo of him doing it? So we went in the studio and we recorded it. And we gave her the demo and she was very, very impressed. But I think in her mind, she didn't want to do it with an impersonator because it's not the same as doing it with Elvis, you know what I'm saying? So I never really, Jimmy said she really loved the thing, and she said she was considering doing something with it, and that was the last I ever heard. And this was in 2009 or 2010 or whatever. It was just a fact that was nice that she, she enjoyed it and stuff. We did it, and he did tell me, he says, listen, she really likes it. And it stayed in my show, and people really like it. I end the show, the first set with it all the time, and the people really like the story, and they really like to hear what it would have sounded like for Elvis to do that song. So, and it's got an interesting byline to it.
God-given. Elvis Presley's voice was God-given. And Pete Vallée, same thing. You can't train anyone to sing with that deep. You feel it. When he sings, it goes through you. And you can't help but pay attention to him.
It's his persona. It's just who he is. And he's been doing it a long time. Pete's been doing that a long time. And you become that character a little bit. You know what I mean? Without even trying. It's just the way he is. When you're good, you're good. People love him. That's why you see all the people that you've seen in the last, couple weeks. I mean, everybody loves the guy. And he has a personableness with the audience. That's the secret. Not everybody has that connection.
If you can make your audience feel like you really care about them, and you're in their corner, and you really want to entertain them, and you really touch their soul that way, they're going to love you, and they're going to follow you, and they're going to want to touch you and be part of you. And that's what's happened. I mean, I've been blessed. God's given me a real blessing to make people feel like family or friends, and the following that I have, I know is from God. It's unbelievable.
He's got so many fans. It's really unbelievable. I mean, I go to shows all the time. I've never seen fans come an hour before the show in a lounge act. I mean, they come an hour before waiting for him. There's always a million questions to be answered. It's crazy. It really is. Everybody loves him.
What you see on stage is what he is. He's a caring person. He's a genuine person. And I've seen him take time, hours just to meet everybody that comes by. He's got time for everybody.
We've probably seen him 20, 25 times at least.
His voice is so real, so pure. There's nothing added, nothing taken away. And for Elvis fans, that's what we look for, somebody that has the passion and the voice.
I was just in an interview about a month ago or 3 weeks ago with a columnist in town, and he was saying, I look at a diverse amount of, such a diverse crowd. He goes, ethnically, he goes age-wise, he goes political-wise, he interviewed them. He says, what a whole different feel. But when I look at the audience, you've got some that they're just there to party. So they're hammered, but they enjoy the show, they love it. And you got some that are there, that are fans that have been coming over the years, they really enjoy, brings back a lot of memories for them. And you've got some that are there that, that have lost loved ones, that have seen the show over the years, or they're broken people, I suppose. They're trying to remember a really better time. They come up to me and say, we used to come to the show all the time with so-and-so, so-and-so. We lost them, they passed away, but they just loved your show. That means so much to them. They had your albums, and they start crying. And you'll give them a hug or something. And you can see, they go, thank you for for all the years that you've performed, and you brought so much happiness to my mother, my dad, my son. I hear this so much. You think of the impact of what you've done over the years with that, and how that has touched people. I think it binds it all together, right?
His honesty, his persona, and most of the time when they stand in the back, they really can't see him. But the voice, they'll be walking out or in, and they get about halfway, they have to stop, and they'll be there for the rest of the show. They can't leave. What can I say? It's his magic. His voice just grabs you, and you can't leave.
And one question remains on the minds of many fans. It's one that may never be completely answered. Does Pete sing like, look like, have the mannerisms of the king of rock and roll by mere coincidence? Or is there more to that story? Is Pete Vallée really the son of Elvis Presley? Could this talented entertainer be the crown prince to the king of rock and roll? Well, that remains for you to decide.
I was about 14 years old. As a matter of fact, this was right after I had sang at the talent contest. And the first night, my aunt and uncle were visiting, and my mother and they were in the kitchen. And I hear, "You should tell him." And I thought, well, what does this mean? She's like, no. She goes, "That's not going to help him." And she goes, "I don't want to get this whole thing rolling," or something like that. I was like, what is she talking about? So I didn't think nothing of it that night. I just thought, that's an odd conversation, but it did stick out in my mind because I was like, what are they referring to? So the next year, I'm at my aunt's house. And my aunt pulls out all these Elvis albums, right? She's got all the original Elvis albums and stuff. And my aunt's had a few beers, and she's sitting there, and she's talking, and she looks at me, and she says, she says, your mom, because I thought my mother and dad split up in 1970. And my aunt goes, no. She goes, your dad was cheating around and split on your mother, years before, and your mother broke up with your dad. And I said, really? She goes, yeah, they were not together for about a year there, from 1964 through late 65. And I'm like, well, that's weird. She goes, I don't think your dad's really your dad. And I'm 15 years old hearing this. And I'm like, what? She's like, they weren't together, and you don't look like Claude Vallée. I said, well, that's nice. So I said, well, do you have any idea who my dad was? And she's like, he was a very popular singer out of Tennessee. And I'm like, really? And so I'm sitting there dumbfounded. I mean, I'm talking to myself. I'm leaving that house going, what the hell is this all about? So I go back home, and I'm looking at my mother, and I'm going, Mom, is there something you want to talk about? I mean, and my mother felt guilty, I could tell, because she didn't want to admit that she had done something because she was Catholic upbringing, and it wasn't right to do that. And she was always very defendant of that. But she was like, your dad cheated on me. He was leaving. He did take off to Vegas. He'd do whatever. And he had all these different women, and people would come to the door saying, it's my baby. I was like, oh my gosh. She told me what I wanted to hear. I was like, wow, Mom. She goes, well, we weren't together at that time. And I was like, yeah, okay. So can you tell me if, and she's like, well, I don't know. And then she'd let it go. She just kept letting it go. And so over the years, I kept grilling her. I was like, Mom, come on, you need to really tell me the story here if there's something there. I mean, your sister's telling me that I'm not Claude's, kid. So I think, and I know my mother really well. I looked at her and I was like, there's a story, there's a real big story here, a big one.
When I first approached Pete about his connection with Elvis, he thought, I asked for a meeting, and he thought I was going to quit as his manager. And so he came to the meeting with his whole script in his head as to the, the bullet points he was going to give me as to why I couldn't quit as his manager. And when I said to him, I have a question for you. Are you Elvis Presley's son? And he almost spit his food out. He just looked at me and he said, why would you say something like that? And I said, well, I've read like 9 Elvis books now, and I had gone to the library and checked out every Elvis book I could check out on people who had written unauthorized bios, anything that I could find on him to find out his traits, his mannerisms, his this, his that, and everything and anything to find out dates, timelines. And I said, well, because your mom was obviously with him at such and such a time, because I looked through a number of books and made a timeline myself. She was there. She had been introduced to him. She was on the set of that movie. And you were born like about 9 months later.
Now, my mother, let's track back just for a second, was in Nashville in the 60s. Now, she had a really good friend. Her name was Kitty Wells. Kitty Wells was an old country singer. I didn't know God Made Honky Tonk Angels. So this is really old stuff. But Kitty Wells had a correlation with, there was a tie between her and Elvis, because Elvis liked her like an aunt, because he had met her on something called the Louisiana Hayride. Now, Elvis was 19 years old when he was on the Louisiana Hayride and made friends with Kitty Wells. Well, my mother was there in 1964, and she was doing a recording session in Nashville. And Kitty Wells met up with my mother and said, hey, you know, Elvis invited us. He's doing a movie called Kissin' Cousins. And it was in the Ozarks in Nashville, Tennessee, where he was filming. And she said, he's going to be at the RCA Studios tonight. Would you like to meet with him? I was like, well, who doesn't want to meet Elvis Presley? I mean, come on.
She was very pretty and very nice voice, very sweet, very innocent. Went off to Nashville, met up with some people through a friend. She met all the right people, and she met Elvis, and boy, she falls right into the category of someone he would have fallen for, head over heels. She shared a birthday with his mother. Wow. Elvis loved coincidences like that. He thought they were divine intervention, you know. Oh, this must mean it's a sign. I mean, I could see it. The writing was right on the wall.
They must have liked each other, because I've got a ring at home that's a really pretty horseshoe ring with a little Madonna in it, because my mother was Catholic at the time. Anyway, that he had given her.
You know, it's just a myriad of things. The mom had, you know, all of a sudden come into some money, and where did she come from get this money? Because nobody had this kind of money. And why was there a check from Vernon Presley? I mean, it was just like craziness. And his mom was smart enough that she kept a paper trail.
Now, the weirdest thing happened 2 years before. In 1977, my mother, keep in mind, was a nurse. She had no money. I mean, we had very little money. We were very poor. And she does this session in Nashville in 1977. She has DJ Fontana on the drums, which is Elvis's drummer. She has Glenn Hardin, which was Elvis's pianist, on piano. Felton Jarvis was a producer that did a lot of Elvis's producing. He's the producer for this session for my mother. And the guy that signs the check, as I saw the check, was Vernon Presley. So I'm like, okay, why all of a sudden does my mother have this session that's paid for and has, you know, 4 or 5 members of Elvis's group in this session? You know, it's just kind of, and Vernon Presley signing the check. So I'm thinking, you know, that's odd. Okay, you've got to be somewhat friends or close or something for that to happen. Right, and then, you know, I run across a photo of my mother with Elvis, so that was like another nail in the coffin. So I'm just like, you know, Mom, I know you met Elvis. I know that you know, gave you a ring, and I know that, you know, he was a singer in Nashville, and that's you know, going along with what my aunt said. So how much truth is it? And so, you know, this went cat and mouse for years, and finally, when Lucille and Tom Starr came along, my mother talked to Lucille, and Lucille talked to her one night. And my mother told her probably a little bit more, and you know, according to Lucille, she led on to that.
His mom was very close to Elvis. She was close to Dottie West, and his mom was close to that whole group. And so there were rumors, of course, of his mom and Elvis. You know, his mom and I had a number of talks about that, and I don't know if I'm privy to say a lot of things that she told me, but she's passed now, and I just know that at a young age, it started to show that he really was an amazing replica of Elvis Presley.
To make a long story short, that's when Lucille got, you know, did some testing and stuff like that.
I called Larry Geller. He was Elvis's hairdresser. I got his number from someone, and I set up an appointment to speak with him, and I just said to him, hey, you know, I have this guy I'm managing, and guess what? I think he's Elvis's kid. Silence on the end of the phone, and he said, what's his name? And I said to him, you know, his name's Pete Vallée. He said, doesn't ring a bell. I said, his mother was Dolores Vallée. No, Dolores Vallée. I said, Dolores Desautels. Oh my God, he said. I said, I need to know. He said, I work with the estate. And he said, I can't talk to you about this. I just can't. And I said, Larry, I just need to know. He said, you know what? I'm going to send you a package. What's your address? And I gave him the address, and he sent hair. And we hired a lawyer, and we hired a lab, and we did our own DNA testing. We tested his mom. We got a test from her. We got swab from Pete, and his mom did not want to do it. She begged me not to do it. She just said, this is not going to help him. The estate is it's David and Goliath. What are we doing? So we sat down with Pete and said, is this really, is this what you want to do? And he said, well, let's do it. And let's just decide after we find out what the story is, what we're going to do with it.
And of course, according to them, they came back really conclusive that I was Elvis's kid. But, the estate had put up barriers that you can't, the only way you could ever prove that you're Elvis's kid is through Lisa Marie's DNA. She's not giving it up for the life of me, and the estate, life of her. And the estate has got so much stuff barred that I don't think it don't matter if you were, had as much DNA up wherever, it wouldn't matter at all. It just wouldn't matter because it's money and it's big. It's like such a corporate that you're not going to get through to that unless you've got billions of dollars, and that I don't have. So we tried to get through, the estate and asked, hey, we don't want anything. We'll sign a waiver. We just like to know. They wanted nothing to do with it. So I know in my heart, I've got a very strong inkling that I'm, probably his kid, but I've never pursued it, and I've lived with it. I've just lived with it, and I figured, it's been good enough that the fact that, I've got the talent, the sound like that, and that's what I do, and people really admire what I do. So I just figured, well, just live with it the way it is. If it's ever a chance where something comes up to somebody say, yeah, we'll give you a shot at trying it, of course I would. But if it doesn't happen, I'm not going to force it. I mean, there's a lot of different correlation that I can see that I don't look like my dad. There is resemblance to Elvis that I can see, and it stands to reason, just the whole story of my family and what's transpired over the years. So it all points in that direction to me.
There is one thing that Pete knows for certain. He is indeed the Son of the King, God. Pete's faith has sustained him through what has been an often turbulent and uncertain life. And his faith remains first and foremost in his heart and in his daily walk.
I am very thankful, and I do know that in my heart that if it wasn't for God, I definitely wouldn't be doing this. I know that for a fact. I know that he's blessed me, and I know that whatever talent or whatever thing that I've got going on isn't from me. I mean, it's from God, and I'm very thankful for that. I'm very humble, to be honest about it. To be really, really, and people tell me, you got to realize that you're this or you're that, and you're the other thing, and I'm like, well, that's nice that you say that. Excuse me. That's nice that you say that, but at the same token, no, I think a lot of it just is a gift that, like anybody, you just get a certain gift to do something and be thankful for that and then rejoice and share that with people. Whatever you do, to make people happy, and that's, I think I just like making people happy.
I think Peter's really witnessed, God's favor and grace in his life. Just the fact that he's been able to do what he's been doing the last 20 years here as an entertainer, and just kind of like a God-given gift. And I think he's also, been very thankful, and he's given credit to God for this gift.
He will do whatever he can to help people. When Sonny West, who was one of the Memphis Mafia, one of Elvis's bodyguards, when he was took ill, we did a fundraiser. Peter actually put together a foundation so that he could appropriately raise funds to take care of some of Sonny's bills. We put together an amazing event of like 6 hours, 1,500 people packed, to get money raised for Sonny West, to give him a nice chunk of change to try to help him with his medical bill. So that's the kind of person he is.
The big man with a big heart who has enthralled thousands from his chair in Las Vegas recently received one of the highest honors any entertainer can get. Pete got his own star on the Las Vegas Walk of Fame.
He deserves it. It's been a long time coming. He, like I said, his generosity, his heart, his love, outright love for Elvis Presley and what he did and what he represented. He tries to represent that every single minute of every day. And that's what you see when you see him perform. And then voice. Oh. See, I've been spoiled now. Every ETA or Elvis impersonator I see, he's the standard as far as sound goes.
I think it's time. It was overdue. He deserves it. I think there could be no better person or performer that could have one, so I'm glad he has one.
Number 81. See that? That means there are 80 other people who got this star. And he, with Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Wayne Newton, other legendary names of entertainment in Vegas, he's up where he belongs.
I want to thank the most important people, which is you. And you know, I was thinking this morning as I woke up about the star, and I thought that's a wonderful thing to have, but it wouldn't be so wonderful if it wasn't for the people that helped put it there, because you're the folks that are going to see it year after year, and I want to thank you, because that star doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the people that have supported my career. It belongs to you. So God bless you. Thank you so very, very much.
It is so fundamental. It's so important that people realize that it's not about us. You know, it's just not about us. It's about serving other people, and that's what we're on this planet for, really. Trust in God. Go with things, and everything, our lives are already designed for a purpose. In my book, if you're trying to do the right thing, you're trying to, make others happy. You're trying to, live a decent life by, doing it's all about doing it for others. If you're trying to do the right thing for other people, and you're trying to live a decent life, your life is going to be enriched too, because the more happier faces you see around you, the more you're going to be happy inside. There's an old saying, when the Lord calls you home, you can't be late for dinner. And that's fact. I mean, when God's ready and He's done with our life, on this earth, He'll call us home, and that is all right.
I said amazing grace.